It's my time, it's my season, and I've got a good reason to open my mouth. Gonna let it out, open your mind, grab your friend, hope you listen to the end. The vibe is good and learning meets on She Who Speaks.
Hi, welcome to another episode of She Who Speaks. I'm Renee, lover of a good laugh and all things behavioral. With me is Marilyn. She's unassuming, but with a good listening air. And Love Min, unstoppable force with an angelic voice. Together, we are She Who Speaks. We are so delighted and honored to have with us a dynamic powerhouse of a woman. There are many people in the world who have a testimony and will be able to find common ground with Filicia. Filicia is a singing evangelist. She's an entrepreneur and she is a creative mind, but there's so much more to her. According to rain.org, every 73 seconds, abuse happens, sexual abuse. On average, they are usually 12 years old or younger. And also, on average, they know their abuser. We want to caution you that the testimony and the story and the conversation that we're about to have may be a trigger for some. We want to share with you Felicia's story.
Hello, my name is Filicia, and I just wanted to share a little bit of my testimony, I guess, in a very concise way. And I'm sharing this because I believe there are a lot of women, and too many women out there, who have experienced this and who are still suffering, but they don't have a voice to talk about it. What I'm referring to is rape. So just when I was about 15 years old, that was my first encounter. Now, this was with someone who I had a relationship with. At the time, I didn't want to, go that far. And the person, I'd say, got a bit, what's the word? I'd say the person got a bit annoyed and frustrated, or whatever happened. The person decided that they would go ahead and, against my will, and do what they shouldn't have done. At that point, I had taken it on to myself and blamed myself and became suicidal. Fast forward a few years later, I was now in college, and this time what happened is this is someone else who I did not have a relationship with, but this person came to the house that I was staying at and had brought a gun because he was a police officer. And he brought his gun to the house with the intention of intimidating me. And he did say to me that, "I'm going to get you." Those were his words. And so one night when I was in my room, I had gotten used to my door just, opening on its own. And so when I heard it that night, because I sleep very light, I didn't pay any attention, but then I did feel a presence over me. Long story short, he came in my room 4 times. And on the 5th time, I said to him, "I'm not going to fight you. Go ahead and do what you need to do." And he left my room without doing anything. And later on, about some minutes after, I was out in the house, because it's a big house, and I saw him crying. there's a lot to this story, and it's very hard to put it in a concise format. What I can say, though, is that really did damage me. And for the fact that I did not want to get suicidal again like I did the first time, I actually blocked out that incident or those incidents to the point where I cannot remember all of it. The reason I'm sharing this, though, is that it did affect my marriage. And I'm happy now that I can say did. This May will make 11 years since I've been married. And it was not until January of this year, 2021, that I was able to finally be free. When I say affect my marriage, it affected our relations, that's my husband and I, our sexual relations, in the sense where there were times when he will do something and it will trigger me. I can't tell you why it would trigger me. He didn't understand, and honestly, I didn't either. I just know there were some things that he would do that would trigger me, and I would just shut down. He was always, so caring and kind and understanding. There are times when he got frustrated because he felt like, he was hurting his wife and he didn't know what he was doing. Thankfully, though, God be praised, he is a very patient man. And so for 10 and a half years of our marriage, he endured that. And thankfully, God came through. And so, as I said, in January of this year, it dawned on me that I no longer was suffering like that. I want to encourage somebody who is watching this to know that God is able. It is through the help of counseling, the help of acknowledging, accepting what happened, and truly, just allowing the Lord to pour his love in me, and then for God to use my husband as well, to pour that kind of love in me, that I, over time stopped being suicidal, and over time was able to accept myself, over time was able to move beyond that to the point where I now can share it and not have a headache or feel, threatened. Because I did at one point felt like I was going to die, because of course he told me if I told anyone, he would kill me. So I just want to leave this with you, that there is hope. And if God can do it for me, if he can restore me, he can and he will restore you.
Whew. It's a lot to take in, and I hate to make you relive this experience. But my first question is, what were some of your immediate thoughts after the first attack, then the second one? What did you have in mind?
Well, for the first time it happened for me, it was more of blame. Like I took that on to myself. I told myself I should not have gotten involved. So it was all about the mistake I had made, and it was my fault. I should have known better. And so that led me to becoming suicidal, like to the point where there would be just days when I would just be trying all sorts of silly things to end my life. And sometimes I'd be around friends and they'd be like, "What's wrong with you?" So that was the first time. The second time was totally opposite. I ended up blaming God. I said to him, I hate you. I literally told him I hate you because I had gotten beyond the whole suicidal thing and, decided I was going to, live a better life and all of that. And for it to happen in a way where it's not somebody that I was involved with or anything, I blamed God. And the other thing that I did also was to block it out. So I was no longer, it was almost as if I was two different people. I don't even know how to explain it. It was like,
Yeah.
it was, I'd go home and it would happen, and that was one person, and then the other person would get up and leave and just go about whatever my life was. And that's why I said earlier that, I don't remember some of what happened because it was just a mental block. So yeah, I think that's the difference between the two experiences.
Mercy. So I cannot imagine the level of distrust you must have had dealing with men in general. I know you're married now. So I'm curious, how did you even get to the point where you were even comfortable to date again, having had all of those traumatic experiences?
Here's a funny thing, because, and that's why, I'm so passionate about this because, as I said, the first one was so much. Well, the first one, I took it on to myself. I told myself that I was the one who was bad, right? The second one, I kind of blocked it out. So it's weird because I still was able to have relationships, and I don't even know how I functioned, but I did have normal relationships, I'd say, afterwards. I'll say this, even during the time that the second one was happening, I was actually dating a guy, and he was very, like, so mad when he found out that, I was going through that and I wasn't telling him. So when I say I had like a split personality, it was like, it's very, very deep. It's very serious. Over the years though, because this happened when I was in college, and this was like 2003. I got married in 2010. So that's about 7 years span.
Yeah.
Over that time period, God did help me to, process it. Like, I did go to counseling, which I'm a huge advocate for. So that did help to heal, help me to heal, so that I was able to date and accept. As a matter of fact, with my husband, it's a totally different thing. Like, God actually told me to get married to him, or to allow him to be my husband. So it's like, but yeah, like, God had to literally intervene to help me to move from that and not see every man in that light, to be able to trust my husband. Yeah.
Wow.
I have a question talking about your marriage. I really wonder, how was it possible for you to have a healthy sexual life when sex is your biggest trauma? Like, I'm really trying to understand how you can separate those two.
And that's the one thing I was not able to separate. So I was normal otherwise, but when it came to, the time for my husband and I to, make love and all of that, we're married, May will make 11 years. And up to January of this year, so for 10, almost, well, more than 10 and a half years, our sexual relationship kind of suffered. Yes. So it became almost like, I think for him, he'd probably see it almost like a chore, because, you're excited, you want to do it. But then when it comes to the actual doing it part, for whatever reason, whatever he does, he wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. Sometimes I'd get triggered and then I'd shut down. And, he'd try to figure out, like, okay, what did I do? And then, he'd probably, he'd ask, did I hurt you? Am I, do you want me to stop? So it's always like, this, it's not fluent, And so for the few times throughout those 10.5 years that it was fluent, we celebrate those times because it's like, whoa, it was normal, like, oh my gosh, right? But imagine, 10.5 years, and sometimes he'd get so frustrated at times he'll just kind of, the roll over and just like, okay, I can't do this. I don't know what else to do. At other times I'll just lie there and be like, okay, you're done. Okay. And that's not good for a man. And I tell you, he's very strong, and I give God thanks for him, for the strength that he placed in him to deal with something like that. Because some men don't go through that much and they're gone, they either have someone on the side or whatever. I can, I know I can say for a fact that he's been faithful. So it's really, I say that, I'll put it this way. I always say that he is God's gift of grace to me, based on the things that I've been through, based on how, the sexual relations and what that can do for a man and what it has done to him, and for him to still love me the way that he does. Ooh. Yeah. It's a blessing.
That's amazing. And Felicia, I'm just so, I know we just got started, but I'm just so in awe of how brave you are and just how open you are to share these things, because I know that we're talking about abuse from a woman's perspective. We know men also encounter abuse. It's such a hard experience to own, and even harder topic to talk about. So I'm just so grateful for you standing in this space of vulnerability and just being a voice for so many people who have experienced this. And you mentioned that you're in a very functional, healthy relationship where it sounds like you suppressed one part of your experience and created a different personage kind of to deal with regular life and to cope. And so I'm sure that there's so many people that are probably doing the same thing, where they're in relationships and their partner may not even have the slightest clue that this is what they're experiencing. So thank you so much for demonstrating, just owning and speaking up and empowering women. Wow. So my question is kind of going into how it's hard to speak about it. One of the things I was reading and noticing as we were preparing for time together is that lots of children, and your first encounter, you were a child, not as young as some people might think in terms of like 10 or 8 or 7, but you're still so young to have your body and your innocence violated, and that is never okay at any age. But tell us, what can parents do? What can friends do? What can the community do to spot signs that maybe their child is being abused? But perhaps you mentioned that you didn't want to talk about it because you were afraid for your life. How can we as the community have better skills to be able to spot if there's abuse happening, and what can we do to support?
First off, I just want to clarify the difference. So the first time I was 15 years old, and that was, as I said, with someone that I was involved with. So just the fact that a 15-year-old is involved with someone is just, who is like twice her age. I think the society, and I have a thing for Jamaican society, we see things, we know it's wrong, and we don't say anything, right? As a matter of fact, when we do say something, what we say is, she bad, the girl bad, right? And we don't put the responsibility on the adults, which is usually the man, to not do something like that, to not get involved with someone at that age, because really and truly you're not that mature to make those decisions, right? So anyway, and the second time I was it's about 19 or so, thereabouts. Thankfully, and there are people, I can tell you, there are people out there that the Lord will place it in their hearts to realize that something is wrong. God did that for me. So even though I'd actually hidden the whole thing and was continuing on with my life, God really did place it in somebody's heart. And she reached out and she literally called me and she's like, he troubled you, didn't he? Like she didn't even go around any corners. So I think discerning, having a discerning spirit, having intuition, being connected with God, and just really, just not, how do I say it? Just not brushing things under the carpet. If something looks like it's off, it probably is. At least do the person the favor of asking, right? That's one. The other thing is, and I've read it too many times or heard about it too many times, where a child will tell their mom, usually it's the mom, and the child will get beat. I've heard too many stories like that. You need to leave the child. At least give her the benefit of the doubt. At least. If she is lying, then that's something else you can deal with. But it's better to err on the side of, hey, I actually did investigate this. So that's what I would say.
I think one of the things I heard too is that sometimes if you're a parent, if you notice sudden mood changes in your child, if their personality shifts like significantly, they used to be so outgoing and fun loving, and all of a sudden they just don't want to go outside, they don't want to talk, they're always hurt, they're always sad. Wetting the bed, those are some of the things that I was hearing too. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Filicia.
Wow, it's so powerful. And if you had the opportunity to give advice to other women who went through the same thing, or even we talked about men who goes through that, or children, what would be your advice to those people?
The first thing is to accept that it happened. And that's usually the hardest thing. You have to accept it. It's going to take, like, it's a journey, and you have to walk with someone. And usually that someone is a counselor. So I definitely encourage people, seek counseling. You need a professional person to guide you through that. Like, I remember my experience, right? When I went to the counselor and she's trying to walk me through it. Like, I did not want to. I didn't want to remember. I didn't want to relive all of that. But now looking back, I mean, even just immediately after having that session, I felt much better and I was able to cope. If I, even just one step, I was now taking a progressive step towards healing, right? So definitely getting counseling, definitely accepting that it happened. Not blaming yourself, like it's not your fault. Like, you weren't wearing the wrong clothes, you did not say the wrong thing. Yes, you were involved with him, but you said no. It's not your fault, right? So and don't allow anybody else to tell you that. Like, if anybody comes to you with that, like, just tell them, listen, I'll try to say this the nice way, like, get lost, okay? Like, get lost. But on a serious note, like, we do it too often. We blame the victims too often. It's not your fault. Those are probably what I know that it's a journey too. Like, you're not just going to get up and, oh, I'm good. No, look at, when I said January of this year that I was able to, my husband and I were able to have like a normal, and it's after like a few encounters. I said to him one day, I'm like, babe, you notice that we don't have that issue anymore? We were celebrating, right? 10.5 years. And mind you, I've been able to talk about this for years now, at least for 6 years now. But that other part of it, I still it was just beyond me. I just couldn't seem to, and probably I should have gotten more counseling. I don't know, but it took me that long. So know that it is a journey. Know that you're not going to just get over it. but be committed to the process of healing. Yeah.
Wow.
I
Wow.
have a last question. Something that you said that really caught my attention is how you said that when it happened the second time, you blame God. And I'm sure there's so many people in that unfortunately have been in the situation that are blaming God. And from what I'm getting from you is that the blaming game stop. And I would like to know, can you give us what was the click? What happened for you in order for you to say, you know what, God, I'm not blaming you anymore. Like, what happened to have, I guess, someone in that position? Because it's not the first time that I hear that.
It started with how he saved my life, where I was, I was definitely going to end my life that night, and he literally used the phone while I was in a basement, and that was my little way of saying, if you do this, then I will not kill myself. And he's like, oh, really? Here you go. Like full signal on the phone. Like it sounds funny, but I'm alive today because of that little old phone that God put signal on. And so that was his way of first showing me that he loves me. And so I think I'm trying to use that to answer the question. Finding out that God loves you is not something you're going to just get up and figure out, usually, because God is the one who pursues us. So as much as I was pushing him away, as much as I was telling him, I hate you, he then turned around and was like, no, I love you. And so he was using these things. And that was one of the things that he used to show me that, hey, it wasn't like I didn't do that to you. Yes, I allowed it, but I didn't do it to you. For me to shift from the blame game, where first it was me, then it's God, I had to also understand sin and how that whole thing works. Like, it's sin, right? We live in a sinful world and we all have choices. I also look at myself, I look at the guy who did that to me from a standpoint of a sinner like myself who needs to be saved. And I think that's the most powerful thing ever, to be honest, for me to see him as a sinner in need of grace, just as I am. So realizing that, he had a choice. Unfortunately, he chose to do something that was bad, but God is still able to forgive him if he seeks forgiveness, right? And I'm saying a lot of stuff. I hope I'm answering your question, but just to understand, right, how sin works, and that we have a choice. We choose to do some things that are bad, and it affects people. Full stop. It's not God's fault, right? Right. But yeah, I think the love of God that he poured on me, and some years later when he knew I was ready, he also literally told me, because I asked him, why did you allow this? He said to me that, and this probably, I know some people are going to find this to be, whatever, and we're probably going to have some comments, but this was my experience. God said to me, I allowed it so that you can help others who will be going through it or who have gone through it. First time he said that, I'm like, really? Really? I'm like, are you serious, God? Like, you allowed me to go through this so that I can help other people? Like, I don't need to go through this so I can help other people. I was like tracing him off, and anyway. But yeah, so sorry.
But that's a valid reaction.
Yeah.
Yes, I did have a little thing with him, like, and then of course, because God is very patient, right? And so it took another 5 years or so for him. This was in 2015 now. Went to do my concert, and I was about to give a testimony, and this started coming out of my mouth, and I'm like, this is not what I'm literally telling the people, like, I didn't plan to talk about this, but that started this ministry where I'm open about this, because I realize that especially in the church, people aren't. And it fulfilled what he said to me so many years ago, that I allowed this to happen to you because you're then going to be this person to help others who are not as strong. as you are. So
Mm.
answer your question.
No, that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
you are such a strong person, and being able to still trust God, still trust the journey, still trust the path that He has put before you. It's just amazing. And I'm gonna repeat myself from previous episode, but sometimes we all have different traumas, right? And sometimes we like to let this trauma define us,
Mhm.
but they don't. So my question always is, what what brings you joy? What are the things that bring you joy, and that 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 you want to tell, that did not affect what happened to me, does not define who I am and what I like and what I'm gonna do in life? What?
Um, One of the first things is when I realized that I was created for a purpose.
Mhm.
I don't think there's, you know, as great as that to realize that, because being suicidal means that you don't see why you're meant to be alive. Like you don't, and the devil, convinces you that, hey, you're not even supposed to be around. Like nobody loves you, not even God. Like just kill yourself. So to see that I was created for a purpose, and I'll put it further, to see that I was created for more than singing, because that was one of the time that's what I thought all I was created for. To see that I was created for more than that, and then to allow God to use me in so many different ways. And I'm telling you, it's so fulfilling when you see God can use you to touch other people's lives, right? The other thing that brings me joy is, if I can say, the peace of God. And wow, every now and then I'll stop and I'll be like, it's so amazing to have peace. I've spent most of my life, I'd probably say 30 years of my life, being depressed in one state or the other. And when God gave me peace, like, I
Mm.
can't describe it. I'm sorry, I can't describe it. But it's this thing that where you're just you're just you're just happy, and you don't even know why. You're fulfilled. You're filled with joy. Like you don't, there's not this turmoil going on in your brain. Like your brain is at ease, like it's calm. I don't know, like that's the best way I can put it. um and to not, as you said, like to not use what I've been through to define myself. I see now the different outlets that God has created me to pour into. So, the singing is one, of course, but then, there's so many other little things that I'm doing. And, just loving my husband is a purpose for me.
Mm.
Just loving him the way that he deserves to, because he has poured so much in me. Even when I went into serious depression like 1 month after we got married. Like I just call this man and be crying on the phone. Like I could go on and on. I'm sorry, it's a lot. And he stuck through all of that. He'd still hug me. He's like, babe, I understand. He'd come home, the house is dirty. He's like, babe, I understand. It's okay. Like, so I believe my purpose too is to love him. I'm sorry. To love him, I think I was created for that. And my kids, the different ministries that I have, all of that is what keeps me going. And to know that I have a God who, in spite of how messed up I am, because I've made mistakes too, I've done things that's been really bad, but to know that he still loves me and he's looking forward to meet me in person, it's just amazing. Yeah.
Felicia, can you tell us where we can keep up with the amazing things that God is using you to do? I know you have a ministry. I know you're an entrepreneur. So can you tell us, where can we keep up with you and see what God is using you to do?
Yeah, mostly on Facebook. I I have a couple of pages. The one that's dearest to my heart right now is I Believe in Bedtime Stories. So, that's just an amazing thing that God has been using me to do, to just record bedtime stories for not just children, also adults, because, everybody has been listening to them. It's almost like a sermon in bedtime story format. It's meant to just, for you to relax and be drawn closer to God just before you go to sleep. I also have a little health business that I'm running. So I call that I Believe in Health. My I Believe tagline is so dear to my heart because I'm a woman of faith. I'm crazy over faith. So I believe in bedtime stories. I believe in health. And I'm also just on Facebook as Filicia Williams for my singing ministry.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you so much.
thank you so very
Yeah.
much for being here.
Ooh, we're blessed.
We were. And if
Praise
you
God.
are viewing, maybe this testimony was close to your heart too, because you've had similar experiences. We hope that you are finding a community to love and support you through this. If you are married to, dating, parenting, related to anyone who has suffered abuse, I hope that this testimony will encourage you as you attempt to just minister to them, support them, be aware of the signs to look out for. And we're praying for you. We're supporting you. As always, if this has had any value to you, or if you know of anyone that might benefit from being able to listen to Felicia's testimony, we ask that you will share, that you will like, and that you will subscribe. Until next time, you are not alone. Take care of yourself and each other. And if you do need that help, don't forget that you have many suicide prevention lines that you can tap into. There's free counseling available. I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that before we go. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
On She